The 51st governor of Indiana, Eric Holcomb, is a little more than a year into his second term. We check in with him now to see how things are going. Thanks so much for joining us, Governor Holcomb.
It's great to be with you all again.
Well, I tell you, you're a lifelong Hoosier. Back when you first ran in 2016, what were your goals for our state, and what did you want to accomplish through serving as governor?
Boy, 2016 seems like a lifetime ago. It's truly more than just a couple terms. We've been through so much together. Some things you never could have predicted, but others we set out to continue to take our state, I always say, to the next level. But in essence, what that means is to improve and seek to improve our status and our standards and our accomplishments and the results every single day. And we focused from the very outset on economic development, on community development, and on workforce development. And it's almost the circle of life for any state or nation, quite frankly, that you have to try to have a growing economy so that you can invest in those people and places, that workforce and the places that we all call home. And we seek to be the best place in America for people to live and work, study and play and hopefully stay in their retirement years. And so we've been very focused on making sure that we're an attractive place to grow, never satisfied with the status quo, and always improving, always getting sharper or quicker or cleaner, or you name, put whatever adjective you want that's improvement. That's what we seek to do. And we've made so much progress by being almost relentlessly focused on those areas. And then what I would say also to go kind of hand in glove with those efforts is we've made a concerted effort to do this together, not just get through a global pandemic, and now we're kind of in the endemic phase of it, but also in everything we do to forge these partnerships so that everyone has skin in the game, the individual, the community, and obviously the state. And we now have the financial wherewithal to do a lot of things that, say, for example, 10 or 20 years ago, we just weren't able to do. And so I'm happy with our progress, but I'll never be satisfied. How's that?
Right. Well, I know you mentioned the focus on economic development, and I think I read last year more than 300 companies committed to bringing jobs to Indiana. Now, as part of that, it's also part of the talent pool and educational attainment. And I know you've rolled out programs like Next Level Jobs for skilling up and things like that. How are we working to skill up our Hoosiers, improve our educational attainment so we can continue to attract economic development?
Yeah, those jobs, and they are multiple, as you allude to, will never be done trying to expand more opportunity to more people. And so that starts at the very local level, at the street level, obviously with a lot of support from the state, financial programs, et cetera. And you allude to a few. We find ourselves with a good problem, if I could describe it as that. And that means that our revenue, our reserves, our GDP is at all record levels. Our business sector is booming. Our home building permits are more than every state we touch. Our population growth rate is more than every state that we border and touch. Our wages are going up. And I don't want this to sound all rosy, because they better be, because inflation is here as well. And it's really hitting us. So it really puts more pressure on what you say is to create more pathways at the K through 12 level, so that folks are getting the certificates and the credentials and associate's degrees before they ever step foot at Ivy Tech or Vincennes University or University of Evansville or USI, or you fill in the blank, IU, Purdue, Notre Dame, wherever in our state. I hope they all stay in our state. But it's not just K through 12 and post-secondary, but there's also adult programs. And you mentioned a couple: Workforce Ready Grant and Employer Training Grant. These are programs that have positively affected to the tune of tens of thousands of Hoosiers that want to reskill for good careers that are there. It's such a tight labor market. We find ourselves, as we talk right now, the nation has a 3.6 unemployment rate. We're much lower than that. We're at 2.2%, and in some counties, in the 1 point something percent. And so when we evaluate just how many Hoosiers are drawing unemployment insurance benefits, it's right now it's about 15,000 statewide. That's it.
Wow.
And so we're going to have to continue to do all things well. That means we have to make sure folks our kiddos who are going through K through 12 are getting a relevant education that has a pathway that leads to a meaningful career. We have to make sure that our post-secondary places of higher learning and training are available to access for all. And then we have to make sure that those who are seeking to completely change careers are able to do that. In addition, we need to continue to recruit more in-migration to our state, and we need, I think, federal immigration reform. We have millions of people hung up that want to come to this country like my ancestors did, legally, and they want to work. And obviously, when we live in a state and a country that has a historically low birth rate, death rate ratio, we need to add to the top of the funnel so that they get down into the jobs, whether it be in Poseyville, Evansville, Angola, or Gary.
Well, you touched on it. Bringing high wage jobs here is very important. But on the other side of it, it's the cost of living. It's the cost that we are now incurring. And you mentioned inflation, big hot topic right now. Is there anything that you can do as governor or that the legislature can do to help fight inflation or mitigate inflation?
Well, we have to, and we took some meaningful steps because you don't operate in a vacuum. You have to make sure that what's going on around you, be it inflation, supply chain issues around the world, COVID, you fill in the blank on challenges that we have to overcome, and we have to be able to react to those. And the states and nations that are more nimble, that are capable of reacting quicker, are going to find themselves in a better situation, not just during the storm or this time of inflation, but after it as well. And so that's why during a short session that we came out of earlier this year, we continued to cut taxes, personal income taxes, a modest amount. We eliminated the utility receipts tax. Obviously, we've capped property taxes long ago. So we have to do everything we can every single year that we get back together as a state, as policymakers, to make sure that we're attractive for further investment, those higher wage jobs, and that people have access to them. And so remaining a low cost of living state, not just a low cost of doing business state, but a low cost of living state of paramount importance. And then we're taking a slightly different approach. And I was very pleased that out of the session, we've got some new Indiana Economic Development Corporation tools to be, as I'm starting to say, politely picky about the businesses that we are welcoming. All comers, come on in, come do business in the state of Indiana. But we are seeking to do business with people who are paying above the county average wage, above the state average wage, and above the national average wage. That's making a difference. And when you look at the capital investment, the CapEx that's coming into our state, last year we set an all-time record. This year, I think we'll crush that record. And the wages are going way up as well. So when the Indiana Economic Development Corporation started, this was many years ago in 2005, our average wages were about an hour, it was $18.83. They're now well over $33 an hour for those new jobs that we're bringing into the state. The trick is, our job is to make sure we're getting people moved into those higher wage jobs. And to do that, we need, the more you learn, the more you earn.
Right, right.
And by the way, health is wealth, and to use just a couple phrases. So we got to be healthy and skilled up for those jobs, because what we know is companies around the world, around the country, they want to come to a state like Indiana where they can grow. And we can do the math for them, and we can show they can grow here, but they need the workforce to fuel their operations as well. So we have to be focused on all those things.
I know you've mentioned, again, a lot of focus on economic development, but in order to attract talent into our state, we also have to make sure that we've got a great quality of place, which means having affordable childcare. What are we doing about making sure that we have affordable housing? I know that's been an issue in many communities throughout Indiana. So what can you as governor or the legislature do in order to help us kind of open up those spots in affordable childcare and also housing?
Absolutely. Those are probably issues number one and number two that we hear about from folks who are maybe wanting to get back into the workforce, but they've done the math. And so maybe it's less expensive for one person in the household to stay home and watch the kids, and as opposed to paying for health or childcare, and obviously housing. So there's a number of things that we're working on right now and doing right now along those lines. One is, and I would recommend to everyone that's watching to go to our FSSA's website. There is a childcare portal for providers and for folks looking to send their children to the closest. And there are some ways to subsidize that effort if you so not just apply, but qualify for. And we're leaning into that. There's also something that's good going on, and that is companies are more and more having to get creative, quite frankly. It's not just that the jobs climate has changed. It's also, therefore, and recruitment efforts have to change as well along those lines. Childcare is a huge incentive. And so I was just at a business that did a ground Southern Indiana based business, Cook Medical, in Bloomington, and they've opened up a new facility, and childcare is part of the business model now, and as is mental health assistance, as is legal assistance, and so it's more of a holistic. And then there are ways that the state of Indiana can partner with those individual businesses, whether it be nurse family partnerships to help bring down our infant mortality rate, or you name it. We were involved in that actual business. Housing's another really big one, not to gloss past childcare. I could talk about that for hours on end, but it's going to take both of us. It's going to take the private sector, the businesses themselves, and local and state government. The housing is something that we just heard a lot about. Obviously, Indiana is a target-rich environment for development that wants to be developed. We're still about 84% farm or forest terrain. So we've got a lot of room to grow if that's one of those trade-offs a community wants to make. We rolled out, and the Evansville area has been a leader going all the way back to regional cities, that initiative, and then the READY program as well. This was an area we recognized, and we said housing has to be a component of the READY program. Obviously, Evansville and the whole area, the 4-county area that submitted, overperformed, overexcelled, and was, again, I'm not pandering, it was a model. I mean, you got the maximum amount, and we pointed toward that submission all over the state of Indiana. Housing was a big part of it statewide, and it to the tune of about $4 billion. So the $500 million that we put forward has attracted about a little over $10 billion off the sidelines. $4 billion of that is housing. And so, but this goes right back to what we talked about earlier. We have the financial wherewithal. We have the partnerships in place. We have local communities, urban, suburban, and rural, that want to grow. And now we need the workforce to build those houses and to build those new businesses that are coming to the area. So again, right back to that circle of life, right back to K through 12, right back to our institutions of higher learning. We've got to have pathways, apprenticeships, internships, pathways have to be scaled up all over the state of Indiana so that we remain sticky to folks who are going to school here and they stay here, but also that we attract from outside our border.
Well, let's expand a little bit on the Ready Grant. I think our region got about $50 million. So what is
50? Yes, the maximum amount.
$50 million.
50,
so,
yes.
So how is that process going? How will those funds be dispersed, and how quickly will we see those projects start to begin and come to fruition?
Yeah. Well, let's, if I could, just rewind the tape back to that original kind of pilot program that Evansville was a leader in, and two other communities that got $42 million. That equated to, I think, if my memory serves me correct, I think Evansville leveraged about over $900 million to that 42. So you think about a back-to-back 42-50, million that attracted 900 plus million, and now what we predict will be more. This is a huge infusion of investment in a relatively short period of time. Mm-hmm. And obviously we felt overconfident, quite frankly, that Evansville and the whole region, I shouldn't just always say Evansville, it's the whole region, right, that would put these dollars to fantastic use as well, transformational use as well. And so we find ourselves right now in the middle of May, where we have approved all of the packages for the 17 different regions around the state of Indiana. And now the Indiana Economic Development Corporation is working with your region and 16 others to approve the actual projects that you prioritize. So we're working, again, hand in glove with local communities. I think the two things that really stand out to me about this program. So the short answer is, Amy, soon, now, this month, is these projects are going to be starting to be approved funding wise, from a funding perspective, broadband internet, you name it. But it's actually working with the local community to figure out which projects get funded first. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to one of the two biggest positive impacts of this READY program, of which January will be here before we know it. And I've not been shy about saying we need to do this again, mm-hmm, statewide, because this is part of the answer. And I think the reason it's part of the answer is it wasn't the state of Indiana. I'm not piling on my own, but it wasn't the state of Indiana up top here going, this is what you need to do. It was the state of Indiana coming to regions and saying, self-select, determine your own region, mm-hmm, and then put projects that are going to lift that region from a workforce development and a talent attraction. Again, your area has consolidated and aligned in terms of talent attraction in a real positive, tangible way that's making a difference. And we want to be able to support more of that. And so coming in at the ground level and saying, let's talk about this. We need to review it. And then because they're state dollars, we'll approve of projects that we agree with you on. And there were some regions that submitted hundreds of projects that, if we had all the money in the world, we might not have gotten to them, but that's good. Now we got to prioritize and get to the ones that the 500 million and the 10 billion can fund. And we're doing that right now as of this month. It's probably the first time I've said that publicly, but it's happening because I know I'm in touch with the IDC every day. They're working on this. And secondly, in terms of working at the ground level, and then secondly, I think the most important thing that came out of this whole READY process and review process is this has brought together county commissioners and mayors from 1 or 2 or 4 counties away from one another. And now all of a sudden they're in the same room, and they can represent, they contemplate what the Stone Family Health Science Center is doing, and they contemplate what the hospital across the street is doing, and they contemplate what the airport's doing, and the whole broadband internet connectivity status is for the whole area. Housing, you mentioned, and I think having that leadership team in place that represents all those different sectors is critically important, not just for today, but for 10 or 20 years to come.
Well, one huge topic that I want to try and cover before our time here ends is utility bills in Indiana. Just a large topic of interest down here. And some people in southern Indiana have experienced a 50% increase in their utility bills. Now, I know you have the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, for which the utilities have to make their proposals. How do we start to provide relief to Hoosiers? And what needs to happen with the IURC in terms of living up to the statute that they make decisions in the public interest?
Yes. A number of things. And again, maybe I could rewind the tape a little bit to say we always want to, and we'll get to cost. We always want to maintain the reliability and the resiliency of our grid. You don't need to look very far around, not just the country, but around the world now, unfortunately, to see what a disruption the long-term cost can really cause. And so for a state like Indiana in the Midwest, that is blessed with so many attributes, we have to make sure our energy system and our grid is not just stable, but reliable, and at the same time affordable. And by the way, we get cleaner every day. And so we're becoming a real leader in the top 4 or 5 in terms of renewable energy sources, adding to that all the above approach that Indiana has. Having said that, there are costs associated with that transition. There are costs associated with maintaining an aging infrastructure system and improving it right down to the street level. So there are expenses there. But what I would recommend, and what I have seen really work, is no matter what your socioeconomic status is there are various programs, whether it be in southwestern Indiana or northeastern Indiana, and every point in between, is going to, if you cannot afford your bill, if you qualify for a certain program, there are a myriad of programs that can help you weather those cost increases, whether it's today during an inflationary time or just in normal kind of upkeep and operation of these energy sources. And so I would recommend to not wait, but to go directly to each of the providers, find out about the programs, because what you said at the very outset is true, spot on, and that is we have laws on the books that ensure that utilities have to shop prudently for the different sources of energy, and we have to make sure that they're able to provide that. So they do, and then there are specific programs for, you name the utility company, that I think if you cannot afford to pay that bill because of whatever condition that we find ourselves in, to seek that remedy.
Well, one last hot topic, gas prices. You mentioned taxes earlier, and some other states have suspended a state gas tax in order to kind of give relief to that. Have you ever considered that?
I looked into it very thoroughly during the legislative session. There's there's kind of two answers to this. One, when I looked into it, I quickly learned that actually a governor can't suspend unless during a time of an emergency, an energy emergency, meaning there's a shortage and our threshold is 8% shortage of fuel, and we're not remotely close to that. This isn't this increase isn't a product of a shortage, and so all the other states that have done this have done it through the legislative process, which is obviously was on the table and would be again potentially in January when we all assemble once again. But what I have said is, in the meantime, we have to make sure, this is why it's important and not just rhetoric, we have to make sure that we find ourselves in a low cost of living state. We remain there, and that we're adjusting dollars that we may take out that could go back. That's why I'm happy that right now, as we speak, $125 an automatic taxpayer refund was going back to Hoosiers. So if you're spending, 140 extra dollars every year on fuel, or more than that, if you're a household that got $250, that's a good start. I mean, it just means that we're not taking it in the first place. We cut and eliminated the utility receipts tax, which ought to help a little. We've capped property taxes according to what the property is assessed at. And I understand the housing market, but you really quickly find yourself into, if suspending one, what do those dollars go to? And we've rightly devoted those dollars to our infrastructure. But also, I'm sympathetic. I eat too, so I know the price of bacon, and I know the price of milk, and I know the price of, you name it, putting a new deck on the house or a roof, etc. It's inflation is hitting across the whole board, and what we have to do as a state is make sure we bring those costs down, but not jeopardizing our ability to raise the revenue to help with mental health, to help with quality of place, to help with all those other areas that, job training programs that we've touched on that are equally important as well.
Well, Governor, can you just very quickly explain why we had the surplus that actually prompted the $125 tax refund for all of our Hoosiers?
Well, we have a formula here in the state of Indiana where if we bring in more revenue than is the level set, then we do two things. One, in these off years, we return that balance and we pay down on one of our biggest sole liability, which is the pre-96 teachers pension fund. And so we did both of those things over the course of these last years, and we just got to a level so high of revenue reserve that the automatic taxpayer refund kicked in, and it could again, obviously, if the revenues, and we'll have Friday of this week, our new revenue numbers will come out for last month. The month before, in March, we were 170 million over of the forecast, and we believe that April is going to be another monster month. And so we are moving once again to, because we have you could call it a governor that makes sure you don't accumulate clearly more than you need. And you can always argue about how much do you need, but paying down our debt is a good thing, and returning dollars to Hoosiers is a good thing. And I suspect this inflationary time that we're living through, we're going to be having this discussion again in January as well.
All right.
And it's a budget year, so it's even more appropriate to be having those financial discussions and decisions and how they impact the taxpayer themselves.
Most definitely. Well, there are great things happening in our state of Indiana, and Governor Holcomb, thank you for spending a lot of time with us and sharing a lot of wonderful information. We appreciate you.
Thank you, and look forward to getting down your way again soon.
Thanks so much to the governor for joining us. Next week, we'll be looking at housing stability issues in the area. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.